What happened to back the best controversial radio host in America comes face to face with one of the best polarizing royals of our time. You won't believe what unfolds back Prince Harry steps into Howard Stern's studio. Cerebration. He can ascendancy the anecdotal like he's done with every added softball interview. But this isn't Oprah's couch, and Howard Stern doesn't comedy by aristocratic rules. Before we get into this incredible story, accomplish a biting you hit that subscribe button and be the animated version below, because you're not activity to accept the explosive battle that erupted live on air after most night. The restriction was palpable from the moment Prince Harry walked into the Sirius XM studios. Word backstage was that Harry had specifically requested a certain capacity be off limits, article that immediately set Howard's teeth on edge. Anyone who knows ascetic knows he doesn't booty kindly to celebrities aggravating to behest the terms of his show. The Duke of Sussex arrived with his accepted associates of handlers, anniversary one-armed with clipboards and ascetic expressions, as if they were entering adversary area rather than a radio studio. Howard started the interview with his brand casual demeanor, aptitude back in his armchair with that animate beam that has fabricated him millions of enemies and alike added fans over the decades. So, Harry, he began his articulation accustomed at accustomed New York edge. Your actuality announcement, your new Netflix documentary series. But I gotta ask, don't you anticipate the American public is accepting a little annoyed of the whole? Poor me, I was built into unimaginable abundance and privilege routine. The catechism afraid in the air like a loaded weapon. Harry's media-trained smile faltered for aloof a microcon before he recovered. But Howard Bennett, he consistently catches it. Well, Howard, Harry replied, his British accent appearing to thicken hardly under pressure. I anticipate there's a difference between administration one's authentic experience and complaining. Mental health is article that affects everyone behindhand of their circumstances. Brainy health, right? Howard nodded, but his accent was already shifting into that alarming territory. His longtime admirers apperceive all too well. But let's be complete here, Harry. You fabricated millions talking about how tough your activity was. You had a Netflix deal account, what? 100 million. You wrote acknowledged book. You're doing podcasts, documentaries, interviews. At what point does administration your truth become an absolutely advantageous business model? The flat fell uncomfortably quiet. Harry's handlers exchanged worried glances, and you could practically see them artful whether they should intervene. But Harry, to his credit or detriment, absolutely to engage. I anticipate that's absolutely a contemptuous way of looking at it. Howard, aback someone shares their adventure of agony and healing. It helps others whose ability be going through agonate experiences. Trauma, Howard repeated. Cartoon out the word like he was tasting something bitter. You apperceive what agony is, Harry. Trauma is growing up in the South Bronx with a crackhead mother and no father. Trauma is animate 3 jobs aloof to keep a roof over your family's head. Trauma is not accepting your chef prepare the amiss breakfast at your private state. The atmosphere in the studio shifted dramatically. Howard's producer, Robin Quivers, who had been relatively quiet up to this point, let out a barely audible, "Oh boy," analysis what was coming. Harry's jaw visibly tightened, and for the aboriginal time aback entering the studio, his anxiously constructed media persona began to crack. That's incredibly dismissive. Harry attempted back, his articulation ascent slightly. Just because someone is banking aegis doesn't mean they can't acquaintance genuine psychological trauma. The afterlife of my mother, the connected media harassment, the institutional racism my wife faced. Oh, actuality, we go with the racism card again, Howard interrupted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He leaned forward in his chair, his eyes locking onto Harry's with bloodthirsty intensity. You know what I acquisition interesting, Harry? Every time you or Meghan face any affectionate criticism, it's automatically racism. Bad press, racism. Bodies question your actions, racism. The actuality that maybe, aloof maybe. Some bodies think you're a brace of advantaged brats who bite the duke that fed them charred be racism. The blush drained from Harry's face. But Howard wasn't finished. He was just accepting broiled up. And anyone familiar with his appearance knew that when Howard ascetic smells clear in the water, he becomes relentless. And another thing, he continued, his articulation gaining momentum. This accomplished anecdotal about protecting your family's aloofness while simultaneously putting your complete life on Netflix, autograph acquaint all books, and doing interviews with anyone who pay you enough money. Don't you see the hypocrisy there? Harry's media training was acutely actuality put to the ultimate test. You could see him aggravating the formulated acknowledgement that would diffuse the bearings while still defending himself. But Howard had put him in an impossible position. We allotment our story on our terms. Harry assuredly managed to combat the lies and misinformation that had been advanced about us for years. Your terms? Howard laughed. But it wasn't an affable sound, right? Because God forbid anyone abroad gets to accept an opinion about the guy who angry is back on his family, confused to California, and now makes an act of trashing the very institution that gave him his appellation and his relevance. Acquaint me, Harry. If you hate actuality aristocratic so much, why don't you aloof accord up the title? Why do you still alarm yourself the Duke of Sussex? If you appetite annihilation to do with the monarchy, the catechism hit its mark. Harry's anxiously maintained composure began to crumble, and you could see genuine acrimony aflame in his eyes. His handlers were now actively aggravating to catch his attention, allegedly signaling for him to either change the accountable or wrap up the account entirely. But Harry, conceivably apprenticed by years of pent-up frustration from softball interviews where he was advised with kid gloves, decided to action back. You apperceive what, Howard? Harry said, his articulation demography on a harder edge. I came actuality cerebration. We could accept an able conversation about important issues. But clearly, you're added absorbed in bargain shots and a bridge-akin account than actually discussing annihilation meaningful. Howard's eyebrows attempt up, and a dangerous smile advanced above his face. The Baron of all media had aloof been challenged on his own appearance in his own studio by Addition, who acutely didn't understand the axiological aphorism of appearing on a Howard ascetic show. Howard consistently wins. The restriction in the room ratcheted up to an almost unbearable akin, as anybody present realized they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years to come. Oh, I see, Howard said, his voice becoming deceptively calm. So now I'm the bad guy for allurement you actual questions instead of kissing your ass like Oprah and all the added sycophants you usually allocution to. Here's a thought. Your aristocratic highness. Maybe if you can't handle actuality challenged, you shouldn't be doing interviews at all. But what Howard said next would advance Prince Harry completely over the edge, ambience up a confrontation that neither man would walk abroad from unchanged. Howard leaned back in his armchair with the aplomb of a man who had spent decades perfecting the art of cerebral warfare through radio waves. His abutting words came out with surgical absorption, advised to hit exactly area it would aching most. You know what I anticipate this is absolutely about, Harry? I anticipate you're jealous. Jealous that your brother gets to be Baron, while you're ashore authoritative Netflix documentaries and allurement for relevance in Hollywood. All this brainy bloom and protecting my ancestors' nonsense is just cover for the actuality that you're the spare who couldn't handle actuality additional fiddle. The words hit Harry like a physical blow. His face ablaze red, and for a moment the appearance of aristocratic composure completely evaporated. Robin Quivers audibly gasped to animate that Howard had just above a band that alike he rarely crossed. The flat fell into dead silence. The affectionate blackout that precedes an explosion. How cartel you? Harry whispered, his articulation barely controlled. Then louder. How cartel you reduce aggregate I've been through to jealousy. You accept no abstraction what it's like to lose an ancestor the way I did. To have that agony exploited by the press for decades. To watch your wife be systematically destroyed by the same machine that dead your mother. But Howard wasn't a betment down. If anything, Harry's affecting acknowledgement only energized him further. Oh, additionally the melodrama, he attempted back. Your mother died in a car draft 26 years ago. At some point, don't you anticipate it's time to stop application, that as an alibi for every bad accommodation you make? And as for Meghan being systematically destroyed, she's a millionaire active in an abode in Montecito. If that's destruction, assurance me up. Harry's easily were visibly shaking now, his media training completely abandoned. She was suicidal. Howard, My wife was apprenticed to the point area she wanted to booty her own activity because of the analysis she received. And you're sitting actuality authoritative jokes about it like it's some affectionate of game. Suicidal? Howard repeated, his accent animate to something even added dangerous. Let me ask you something, Harry. If Megan was absolutely in such an aphotic place, why didn't you just leave quietly? Why did you accept to make an accomplished assembly out of it? Why the Oprah interview? Why the Netflix series? Why the book deals? If a dish I loved was absolutely suffering, I'd get them help and get them out of the situation. I wouldn't about face their affliction into a media empire. The allegation afraid in the air like adulteration gas. Harry's breathing became visibly labored, and his handlers were now aimlessly aggravating to arresting to him, allegedly suggesting he end the interview immediately. But Harry was beyond rational anticipation now, captivated by acerbity that had been architecture for years. "You're sick," Harry said, his voice filled with 18-karat disgust. "You're actually sick. Do you get off on this? Tearing bodies bottomward for entertainment. Making a blaze of brainy bloom struggles? No admiration your own relationships have been such disasters. Who could love someone so fundamentally cruel?" The personal advance on Howard's relationships was an appropriate absurdity of monumental proportions. Howard's expression afflicted completely, his predatory smile vanishing and being replaced by article abundant colder and more dangerous. The flat atmosphere became electric with tension, and everyone present knew they were witnessing article that would have consequences far above this single interview. Oh, now we're getting personal. Howard's articulation alone to a menacing whisper. "Okay, let's get personal. Your aristocratic highness. Let's talk about how you alone your family when they bear you most. Your grandfather was dying in area were you? Authoritative deals in Hollywood. Your grandmother who gave you everything, who protected you your complete life, and you couldn't like be agitated appearance of her final years because you were too busy arena victim in California." Harry shot to his feet, his armchair scraping loudly adjoining the floor. "Don't you dare talk about my grandmother. Don't you dare accompany her into your ailing little game." "Sit down," Howard commanded, but his articulation had absent none of its authority, admitting Harry's obvious agitation. "We're not done here. You came on my show. You comedy by my rules, and my rules say we don't stop until we get to the truth." "The truth?" Harry laughed bitterly, but remained standing. "You wouldn't apperceive the accuracy if it bit you in the ass. The accuracy is that you're a bitter old man who makes a living destroying bodies, because your own life is so abandoned and affecting that the only way you can feel able is by tearing others down." Howard stood up as well, matching Harry's advancing posture. Despite actuality older, Howard's presence filled the allowance in a way that reminded everyone why he had bedeviled radio for decades. "The accuracy is that you're a spoiled brat who's never formed a real day in his life, who threw away everything he was accustomed because he couldn't handle not actuality, the centermost of attention. The accuracy is that you've turned your family's clandestine affliction into a public comedy because you're too weak and too egocentric to handle your problems like a man." "Weak?" Harry's articulation cracked with emotion. "I served my country in Afghanistan while you were sitting in your adequate flat authoritative prank phone calls. I've committed my activity to helping veterans, to brainy health advocacy, to authoritative a complete aberration in the world. What accept you any time done besides apish people's affliction for ratings? I've entertained millions of bodies for 40 years. Howard attempt back. I built an authority by actuality honest about who I am and what I think. I don't adumbrate behind charity assignment and victim narratives to avoid demography albatross for my choices. And I abiding as hell don't bite the duke that fed me and a fresh cry about a back body's alarm. Me out." The confrontation had accomplished a agitation pitch with both men now adverse off above the studio like fighters a ring. Harry's security detail was clearly uncomfortable, easily effective subtly toward their positions, while Howard's production agents watched in fascination and abhorrence at the comedy unfolding before them. "You appetite to apperceive what I think," Howard continued, his voice rising about Harry's intensity. "I think you're absolutely like your father, weak, entitled, and absolutely out of touch with reality. The alone difference is that Charles at Atomic had the dignity to ache in blackout, instead of turning his claimed problems into a media circus. The acknowledgement of his ancestor seemed to advance Harry accomplished his complete breaking point, his face angled with rage, and for a moment it looked like he might actually booty a beat at the radio host. The Aegis cadre tensed, accessible to intervene if necessary, while everyone else in the flat captivated their breath. "Don't you ever," Harry seethed, his voice almost animal now, "ever analyze me to that man. You accept no abstraction what you're talking about. None. You sit here in your little balloon judging people's lives like you're some affectionate authority on animal nature. But you're nothing. You're below than nothing." But Howard was intimidated. If anything, Harry's accident of ascendancy alone seemed to fuel his assurance to advance even harder. "I'm nothing. I'm not the one who abandoned his duty, angry as a back on his family, and now spends his time whining about how adamant his privileged life has been. At Atomic, I own what I am. You're still assuming to be some kind of altruistic hero, aback absolutely you're just." Howard paused dramatically, knowing that his abutting words would either end the account or escalate it to a point of no return. The silence stretched out unbearably as Harry stood there abashed with rage, cat and mouse for the final draft that would actuate how this battle would end. "You're just a coward," Howard assuredly said, his voice acid to the blackout, like a blade. "A alarmist who couldn't handle the pressure of actuality, Royal. So you ran away to America and asserted yourself it was about principles. But we both apperceive the truth, don't we, Harry? You didn't leave to assure your ancestors or action racism or any of that blue-blooded you've been peddling. You larboard because actuality of working aristocratic was hard, and you've never done annihilation adamantine in your complete life." The words hit their ambition with devastating precision. Harry's face went from red to white in an instant, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "You don't apperceive what you're talking about," he managed through gritted teeth. But his articulation lacked the conviction it had agitated earlier. Howard had begun the assumption he was looking for. "Oh, but I do." Howard pressed on, analysis victory. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to apperceive how I know? Because I've spent 40 years talking to people, reading people, compassionate what makes them tick. And you, Harry, you're an open book. You're the guy who got everything handed to him and still couldn't cut it. So aback things got tough, aback the media got mean, aback your wife faced the same scrutiny that every aristocratic has faced for centuries, you tucked appendage and ran." Harry's breath was acceptable, accelerated, and shallow, his accord completely shattered. "Stop," he whispered. But Howard was adamant now, analysis that he had his bedfellow absolutely area he wanted him. "You appetite to allocution about your mother?" Howard continued, his voice taking on a biting accent that made everyone in the flat uncomfortable. "Diana would be abashed at what you become. She faced the aforementioned media scrutiny, the aforementioned institutional pressure, and she stayed. She fought from within. She didn't carelessness her duties and abscond to California to make Netflix documentaries about how adamant her life was." That was the breaking point. Harry exploded with acerbity that seemed to abruptness alike himself. "How dare you?" he screamed, his articulation cracking with emotion. "How cartel you adjure my mother's name? You didn't apperceive her. You have no appropriate to allege about what you would think. I accept every right." Howard shot back, analogous Harry's volume. "This is my appearance, and I'll say whatever I want, and what I appetite to say is that your mother died angry for causes she believed in while you're active in a mansion accusatory about how boxy your life is." Harry took a footfall toward Howard's desk, his Aegis detail immediately effective to ambush him. "You're disgusting," Harry snarled. "You're abominable animal actuality who profits off of added people's pain. No admiration your audience is abounding of losers who have nothing bigger to do than accept to you tear bodies down." Howard laughed, but it was a harsh animal sound. "My audience, at least my admirers, doesn't pretend to care about me while I accomplish my family's clandestine moments for cash. At least they're honest about what they want. Unlike you, sitting there pretending this account is below you when you're the one who came allurement to be on my appearance to advance your latest cash grab. I never begged to be anywhere abreast you." Harry spat. "This was a mistake. The better aberration I've made it back effective to America. Finally, Howard exclaimed, throwing his easily up in apish celebration. Finally, some honesty. Yes, it was a mistake, Harry, but not for the reasons you think. It was aberration, because you thought you could appear in actuality and control the anecdotal like you do with all those added softball interviews. You thought you could dispense me the way you dispense anybody else. Harry was now pacing about his armchair like a caged animal, his handlers aggravating desperately to get his attention. "You're delusional if you anticipate this was manipulation," he said, his articulation afrayed with fury. "This was me aggravating to accept a civilized conversation with addition. Anticipation was a professional. Clearly I was wrong." "Professional?" Howard scoffed. "Kid, I've been an able best and you've been alive. The aberration is I'm honest about what I do. I breach bodies bottomlord for entertainment, and I'm abuse acceptable at it. You, on the added hand, pretend to be some affectionate altruistic while you're really aloof edition celebrity cashing in on your trauma. That's it," Harry said suddenly, his articulation baleful quiet. "I'm done. This account is over." He started to abolish his headphones, but Howard wasn't finished. "Oh no, you don't get." To storm out and comedy the victim again. Howard alleged afterwards him. "You came on my show. You acknowledged my questions. That's how this works." Harry spun around, his eyes afire with an acuteness that made everyone in the flat booty a foot fall back. "I don't acknowledgement to you. I don't acknowledgement to anyone anymore. That's the accomplished point of leaving, which your tiny absinthian brain apparently can't comprehend. A fresh why you still use the title," Howard demanded, continuing up from his chair. "Why are you still trading on actuality, the Duke of Sussex, if you're so independent? Why don't you aloof be Harry Mountbatten Windsor, clandestine citizen, instead of milking your aristocratic affiliation for every dollar it's worth?" The catechism afraid in the air like a challenge. And for a moment, Harry seemed absolutely stumped. His aperture opened and closed, but no words came out. The blackout stretched on, acceptable added afflictive by the second. "That's what I thought," Howard said with satisfaction. "You can't give it up because afterwards that title, you're nothing. Afterwards actuality, a prince. You're just edition's seal-less celebrity with daddy issues and a podcast nobody listens to." Article and Harry finally snapped completely. He ripped off his headphones and hurled them above the studio area. They comatose into the wall with a loud bang. "You're sick," he screamed. "You're absolutely sick. I feel sorry for anyone who has to be around you. Feel apologetic for yourself." Howard shot back. "You're the one whose activity to have to alive with actuality a disappointment to anybody who any time believed in you." Harry stood there for a moment, chest heaving, attractive like he was deciding whether to say article abroad or just leave. Finally, he seemed to accomplish his choice. "You apperceive what, Howard? You win. You got what you wanted. You angry this into a circus, and now you can comedy the clips and accomplish money off of humiliating me. Congratulations." But Howard wasn't annoyed with that ending. "Don't you cartel try to accomplish this about me base you. You came here knowing absolutely what affectionate of appearance this is. You anticipation you could handle it, and you couldn't. That's on you, not me. Everything is on me, apparently," Harry said bitterly. "My mother's death, my wife's brainy bloom struggles, my family's dysfunction, the media's treatment of us. According to you, it's all my accountability for not aloof shutting up and demography it. Now you're accepting it," Howard said with an atrocious smile. Finally, some self-awareness. Harry stared at him for a continued moment, and aback he battened again. His articulation was quiet, but abounding with 18-karat disgust. "I absolutely benevolence you. I benevolence anyone who thinks this is what success looks like. Sitting in a studio, disturbing people down, authoritative money off of cruelty. What a sad, abandoned way to live." With that, Harry angry and absolved against the studio door, his aegis detail and handlers scrambling to chase him. Howard alleged afterwards and won after most time. "Hey, Harry, acknowledgement for proving my point about everything. Don't let the aperture hit you on your way back to irrelevance." Harry paused at the door, his duke on the handle, and for a moment It looked like he ability about face about and say something else. Instead, he artlessly shook his arch and absolved out, abrogation behind a flat abounding of abashed blackout and the wreckage of what had started as a simple interview promotion. Howard sat back down in his chair, an annoyed beam on his face as he looked about at his shell of abashed staff. "Well," he said into his microphone, "I anticipate that went pretty well. What do you think, Robin?" Robin Quivers, who had remained largely silent during complete confrontation, could alone administer a weak, "Oh my God!" "Howard, ladies and gentlemen," Howard announced to his active audience, "Prince Harry has aloof larboard the building, and I anticipate we all abstruse something important today about what happens when entitled celebrities anticipate they can come in actuality and ascendancy to conversation. Spoiler alert, they can't." The interview was over, but the after effects was just beginning. As Harry's SUV pulled away from the Sirius XM building, the audio of the battle was already being uploaded, accessible to be dissected, analyzed, and replayed millions of times across amusing media. Howard had gotten exactly what he wanted, a viral moment that would be talked about for years. And Harry had abstrused the adamantine way that some battles are absurd to win, especially if back you're angry on someone else's turf.